So this is a bonus video because I've got the last bit of the art from Mischa, and I decided to showcase all the art that she's put together. This art right here is not actually from the game. This is a webcomic called Desolation Row that we collaborated on, but I wanted to start this with some art that actually is not in the game, so I said, hey, here you go. So without further ado, let's get launching into the art, and I'll give you a little bit of tips and advice and history and all the different art that she put in the book. I'm doing these in no particular order. Actually, scratch that. I'm doing these in alphabetical order as they're saved on my computer. And the first up is the Lupin art from the race section. In this case, it's a Lupin monk, like a pit bull, and the legging is actually from a picture of a gladiator that I sent her. We had to pick what kind of race it was, and she decided to go with a pit bull, so it's not that bad. Then we have the Ranger Archetype Bounty Hunter, and this is a Wood Elf Bounty Hunter from Minrathad with a repeating crossbow. This one took a little bit of revision because we were trying to splice it up without making it look too busy. Then you've got the Etrugan Brave, and this one is actually a replacement for a previous piece done by someone else. People had problem with the Brave, mainly because it was a stealth fighter in a game where fighters aren't supposed to be stealthy, but again, I don't like being told how you can't play a character. And this is what she gave me. I believe it's an elk clan. Then you've got the Rakasta from the race section. This is a domestic Rakasta, probably from Minrathad or the ports of Darrakan. His class is unknown, but he can be pretty much just anything. It's actually one of the more popular pieces, but then again, Mischa really likes drawing the anthropomorphic characters. This was a late edition with the Centurion. This was a fighter type, obviously Roman and Thracian. This one, she sent it to me and I couldn't see the sword because what they send you in line art often looks completely different from the colored. We had to reduce the size of the shield a bit. It's not actually practical in a Roman style, but if you made the shield too large, it took away from part of the character, so we had to skimp for visibility. This is one of the few group pieces that she did. This is the races from Tortle to Lupin to Rakasta, She, Belcade's Elf, Minrathad Dwarf, there's a Sky Gnome, a Halfling, and we did this originally, and when I was told to drop the Tortle because Wizards of the Coast made their lesser, not as good Tortle. I wanted to add something else, so I threw in the Thanaton, and everybody said that, no, my Tortle was far superior than anything that Wizards did. So we left it in. The Thanaton was actually added later, but because he was so tiny and there was a space above the Gnome and the Halfling, she was able to put it up fairly easily. And then here's a Dervish from Yalarum. This is a replacement piece of art. Mischa was not the first choice for the archetypes, but the other artist that I had hired was not going to be available for long term, so I had to replace her, and then Mischa stepped in. Again, it is stereotypical Yalari, though people have complained about the lack of clothes, but the fact that the Dervish don't wear much in the middle of the desert is actually part of their background, so I really didn't care. Then you've got the Cleric of Cagiar, and I don't know why YouTube puts these green dots around it. It doesn't appear anytime else when I bring it up, just on YouTube. This is one of the few NPCs from player characters in the playtest that actually snuck into the book because she played the character so well that we just included it. Had to do some revision because Mischa doesn't like drawing armor, so there was a slight problem, but it got fixed. And then we've got the Shadow Elf Shaman, and this one, first off, was there to show that the Shadow Elves are not drow because she does not resemble a drow. She would never be mistaken for a drow. And second off, it shows off the problem when you have homophone abuse if you're telling them something and they hear the same word but the different meaning. So in this case, the tattoos are supposed to be symmetrical, and I said that she's going to have asymmetrical tattoo, meaning one, and she heard asymmetrical, meaning completely different from each other. So the tattoos originally looked radically different, and I had to go back and explain that no, it was symmetrical as in they're the same, not asymmetrical, meaning they're both different. So that was kind of funny. And here is another group piece. In this case, it's the She Court. You've got Ariel, which I added straight from Shakespeare, Gwynap Nuth, which was mentioned once, but hey, he's Welsh, so he's in. You get Titania and Oberon. It's a bad transfer over to YouTube, but Robin Goodfellow in Puck form is in there somewhere. And you've got Malty Nos. And this one, a lot of people had some problems with some of the art, and they completely missed that that was the entire point. Like, the complaint was that Titania is way too thin to be healthy, but they don't notice that her feet aren't touching the ground. So all of them are slightly off, but they never really noticed that. There's the Fire Wizard from Glantry. This one obviously is based on the Flemish. And this one was actually pretty straightforward, though it took us a while to find the actual example for the costume, because when we type it in, it always gave up weird suggestions, but this one came out pretty good. Then you've got a Gallowglass. Originally the Gallowglass was going to be a human fighter, but then when we were doing one of our Ravenloft run-throughs, somebody played a Scottish Terrier as a Gallowglass, which originally wasn't allowed, and he did such a good job, we decided to turn into a Lupin. Though it turned out that Scottish Terriers are kind of hard to draw as an anthropomorphic and make it look fierce, so she went with a Pharaoh Hound instead. And here you have the Godi, or the Godar. I believe the Godar is the singular. Originally, he had massive Viking horns, but that didn't go over well with people, so those got shaved off. And he's a Viking cleric, and that's pretty much as stereotypical as you're going to get. Then you've got the Order of the Griffin from Keramikos. She decided to do this one as primarily a torso piece. The making him a winged hussar was my decision. I know that the winged hussar are Polish, and the Keramikans are primarily Slavic, like Romanian or Serbian, not Polish, but winged hussars are cool, so I stand by that decision. This one was one of the last pieces that she got done. This was the redoing of the Heldonic Knight. Like I said, when we were trying to get the book done and I was showing it off, of all people, Frank Mincer came up and told me I needed to make all the art uniform, so she had to redo it. I gave her a description of what the Heldonic Knights would look like, and she'd never heard of the Capcom game, but still managed to capture the style of that game. Again, I'm not big on anime, but everybody knows Mystara from the Capcom games, at least the younger people, so I wasn't going to try to hide the fact that that's part of the legacy, and this is what we get. Then there's the Hen Master. I mean, she's cute. She's a lot better than the 5th edition halflings because she doesn't look like her head's about to explode or fall off her body, and the rest of her body is kind of proportionate. The only thing that people had problems with was she was wearing shoes, and I threw out a cheap-ass retcon saying they're magical boots, so shut up. And that turned out to be a pretty popular class, even if it's a little underpowered, according to most people. There's the Horse Warrior, which people said, why isn't there a horse? Well, when we tried to put a horse in, it didn't look good, so she just took it off and put her on the land of black sand, where horses wouldn't go anyways. It's Mongolian style, pretty much copied scene for scene, or image for image, rather, from one of the source books for Mongol fighters. Yeah, that's pretty much it. You know, we had to take the horse out because of spacing issues. Thaetian Forester for fun and giggles. This was actually one of the more popular pieces of art. Nobody had a problem with this one, not even him being a ginger. So, you know, it's nothing to say if nobody has a problem with it. Now, this one people did have a problem with. This was the Toa Makai. This is the redo, because people didn't like the first one. And yeah, she's bustier, she's clothed, and she's not carrying any weapons, but she's springing down. And because people had a problem with the facial tattoos on the first one, which I still do not have a problem with, she decided to do with the more traditional tattoos of the Polynesian women. And that was the original one that people had a problem with. Yeah, she's naked, but she's not sexy naked. She's Brock Sampson naked. And again, people had a problem with her tattoos were not traditional Polynesian female tattoos, which I had to respond that this is a fantasy game, and it, you know, doesn't matter what it is in real life. But people complained enough, and I was told I'd have to lose the nipples or else I would never get this published. So sadly, you will not see this one in the book. And then another Irendi, the College of the Islands, which is a bardic college, one of the few we have. And she just had fun with this one. We'll have too much fun because she actually added a background to it, which she thought would add to it. Not going to complain. This one has a lot more clothes than the warrior, but then again, she's not trying to get primal, naked, and stabby as a bard. Then we had the Wizard School of the Merchant Prince, and people had a problem because this one had cleavage. I didn't care because, you know, it's a game, and you know what? Sometimes women want to flaunt it. And yeah, I liked it. It was a little bit difficult to space out, but that was mainly because Lucid doesn't have the snap around the image rather than the square, which would have made my life so much easier, but that cost more money, so this is what we got. Here's the Ethingar Spirit Shaman. This one is a replacement because she originally got the art for another Mongolian piece, and she had permission to use that, but I didn't have permission to use that, and so she altered it, but then we had to have questions about it. Did she alter it enough? And I went to a lawyer to ask about, if she has the rights to it and she puts it in my book where I didn't have the rights to it originally, do those rights transfer over? And the lawyer told us to just draw something else. So here you go. And here is a monk, which ended up being filler, because I never actually came up with a decent monk in the archetypes that I wanted to go with. This is actually a Yav monk, because the black skin tone is only in certain parts of Mystara, at least on the known world continent, but neither of them are in the Gazetteer series, so this one just ended up being filler because I just couldn't find a use for it. And I had to take a temporary timeout while the computer crashed, but I am back up and running, not that you ever noticed. The next up is Duchess and Candela, the two iconic thieves from Palace of the Silver Princess. We use this as the header for the who's who or who's wanted in Mystara. And we actually had to go in and look to see whether Duchess was the brunette or the blonde. And Candela is the blonde, Duchess is the brunette. The names on the art was attached later in layout, so that was left blank intentionally. So then we have the last of the Mischa art to be added. This is an armiger, actually a gnome armiger. It was originally done as one of the original characters from my very first D&D campaign. But she decided to go in a different route, give him green hair, and hair that was similar to Dr. Weird's from Aqua Teen Hunger Force. Other than that, he's a gnome with a war pick in heavy plate, and it's a boring class as far as style goes. You're a weapon master, so we just went with something simple and to the point. This is the Thanaton, the last of the races we added, because I was going to add one to have 4 when I tried to drop the turtle before my player tester said, no, don't drop the turtle. So we have the Thanaton, and we have a little bit of artistic license because the way they're supposed to be able to wear clothes is pretty complicated. It's like a serape, and that was boring, so she kind of figured out a way to put them in clothes, even though it doesn't really work. Because they're cute and cuddly, this actually proved to be one of the more popular races, based entirely only on the art. This is the art for the Gallant archetype for the fighter. Again, this is a Thanaton. One of the requirements I had when I was laying out the book, that every race and every nationality got 2 appearances, and the Gallant was actually a replacement for the Privateer. Privateer was a fun class that relied heavily on ship-to-ship combat and sailing boats, and those rules didn't come around until Ghosts of Saltmarsh, and that came out much later than I was ready to wait, so I dropped the Privateer and added the Gallant, and everybody liked the Gallant more than the Privateer. This was happy, cheerful art, and one of the more favorite ones. But then again, everybody likes cutesy flying squirrels. And then you've got the College of Philosophy Bard, and this is obviously inspired by History of the World Part 1. The art actually is a repainted over picture of Mel Brooks's World War II photo. We did that kind of as an inside joke, but it was a little too obvious, so she made him a blonde. So it's not as obvious, but when you read the flavor text, it's obvious it's Mel Brooks. This is the Disciple of the Radiance, who is actually a shadow elf, because they're one of the few people that actually can get this. As far as we know, this was the first full-color, single, standalone picture of a male shadow elf. They're actually pretty rare, and Mischa was excited to be the first one to actually do that. This piece is the Rake. It's a she, obviously, and this is one of the ones she had the most fun with, because I told her to just make him as garish as possible. So she decided lime green jacket, light purple, or I guess pink trim with purple slacks, and dyeing his sideburns purple as well. Which, and a terrible hairstyle. I will freely admit that that is a terrible set of hair, but that's what the she do, so that's what the she get. She did the Wokani as a Rakasta, but she did it as a bust, because she had this idea to make it look like a statue, but she still went with the snow leopard. I'm not really sure about the bust. I mean, it's a little bit different, but I mean, it's a decent piece. Nobody had any complaints about it. You've got a Reaver Barbarian, which was, she kind of threw this one together for my description. I'm not a fan of the Barbarian class at all in 5th edition, so I didn't really give her that much of a description to go on. Decent looking character, he's all scarred up, but it's a drug-addicted berserker, so what else could you possibly want? Rounding out the Etrugan art, there is the Shamani, which I believe this is the female. Actually, if you squint close enough, there's actually a little bit of cleavage. This one is a little bit more frenetic than the others. I really wish that Lucid had let me clip around the art rather than just the box that it comes in, because that would have made it look a lot better inside the book. But again, you have to deal with what you're given. This is the second of the she. This is the racial example of the she. Again, very garish colors, inhuman hair color and eye color. This one caused a bit of a stir because people said that her pose was impossible to do until Robert, one of the playtesters, and a very large man, was able to completely replicate the pose entirely. It's not one you can do if you're not limber, but it is humanly possible. We've got the Tree Keeper, which was one of the wizards. This one was actually one of her better ones. I liked this one a lot. I gave her the instructions talking about how she has a half skirt, and Mischa hadn't heard the term half skirt, so I sent her a picture, and then she realized exactly what it was. She's just never heard this kind of garment known as the half skirt. So we got all that worked out, though. This was one of the earliest pieces she did, and this is the one I kind of regret because I think we could have done better, but because it was one of the earliest ones, we really didn't challenge ourselves. The character was supposed to have some sort of hat that had all these different magnifying glasses and tools that were attached to it, and that didn't go well over in the translation. So she just gave him the monocles that flip down. Again, it's decent enough, but I think we could have done better. And this was the first of the Turtles. I do not like the Turtles always automatically being martial artists because they're actually huge and lumbering. They're not ninja-like at all, but she decided to give him a bow staff anyways. Wasn't going to argue too much, but I just wish we could have done something not so stereotypical. Granted, this was well before that they released the lesser version of the Turtle, and then they made them not quite viable to be martial artists, but everybody still made them martial artists. Most of the rest are going to be what I called wizard filler. I was following the suggestion by other layout people that have a picture every so many pages to break it up, and since there was a ton of spells, because I converted all of the Mystara spells from the previous editions into 5th edition, there was a ton of empty space. So these are kind of random, but they're just kind of showcase the different kinds of wizards there are in Mystara. In this case, it's a Glantrian alchemist, and I think this one was in the Secret Crafts of Glantry, but as you can tell, it's just an alchemist. Then we have got a Yalari wizard casting some sort of sandstorm spell. It's actually a spell in the book, I just don't remember what it was off the top of my head. We only had one Yalari, so he became the second. Another Glantrian, in this case an Averone, and again this is one of the secret crafts. She's practicing witchcraft. If you look closely in her right hand, she's got a voodoo doll, though they don't call it voodoo dolls. I didn't have any of the Averone, and the Glantrians I tried to include as many different types as possible because there's like 10 of them. And this one was one of the ones I hadn't gotten around to yet. Just your basic elf blasty type. I think this is again another Glantrian. I hadn't done any of the elves of Glantry except for a Belkades and a group shot, so I wanted to include a standalone, though I don't know why he's doing fire magic. Mischa was, I think, the 9th artist I tried to get on for the book because I had a lot of them that could not either keep up with the deadline that I gave them or just flat out got obstinate. For example, this one was originally supposed to be somebody, I think one of the princes, casting an ice bridge across a river, and the artist said he didn't want to do it. So I didn't hire him, and Mischa got the job. Doesn't have the same effect because that art went to a different artist for a chapter art, but I still wanted to do the walking on the ice as you cast it. So this is what she drew me. It's a gnome. Another Glantrian, this one doing the crypto magic from the Secret Crafts. I kind of think he was a little too close to the alchemist, but I didn't realize how close they were until I got both of them. And then another Rakasta, this one being just a domestic Rakasta. Looks like they're in Glantry or Darrican. They're actually casting a spell that was in the book. I like the Scottish tuck. We use that pose a little bit too often, looking back at it, but yeah, it's a decent piece. This one, I think we didn't go far enough on. Not that the art's anything's wrong with it. She's an Ochaloan, which is kind of like the Chinese-Korean hybrid race, or not race, nationality from Thyatis. It's just we didn't do any more Ochaloans, and the women tend to be the adventurers there. And we did this one as a bard, actually, one of the few bards that weren't attached as part of the schools or the archetypes. Next up, we've got an Irindi wizard. I don't think this one's actually casting any actual spell, at least a named spell. It's just a filler. Mischa wanted to make him more naked until somebody pointed out where he's going to keep his spell components. He was originally going to be a little bit larger because he was going to be based on the Samoans, but she said no, she wants some man meat, so we got her some man meat. And this one right here is a Alphatian from Blackheart. She's got the copper skin. If you look closely, she's got a heart tattoo that's actually black on one of her boobs. And she was an arcane trickster. Just like the style. You can't really do it justice with a black background, but don't have a black background in the book, do we? This one actually became one of the most iconic of the Mischa art because it became a character in one of the Threshold magazines with Amelie von Hendrix, the unknown, until now, daughter from Baron von Hendrix, and she became absolutely evil because we gave her a personality, a charisma of 18, and a lawful evil alignment. And she's got the Prussian uniform, which her father also sports in some of the previous art. So I just kept with that theme from the older art. The last one is not a wizard filler. This is actually a warlock, the only warlock in the book that was added, the Wise Woman. And I am fairly certain that this is her Skyrim character. But it's a nice picture, so I'm not complaining too loudly. I just took it in there. She made a few changes. But, yeah, it's a decent piece of art, and she did a lot of work on this one. And that's all of the Mischa art. This actual art here is some art she did for a card game I wrote called Con, the greatest card game ever written, which I hope one day to actually get it kickstarted again, because, yeah, being able to recreate an entire Con in 15 minutes is a fantastic game. So if you're looking for an artist, you check her out. You can find her on the D&D Fantasy Art page, or look up Mischa Self Frumos. It's in the title. And you can give her money and she will give you art because she's a very good friend and she deserves a break in this industry. So I will be putting up another one tonight. Well, not tonight. I'll be recording it tonight and we'll be putting it up on Saturday because I will be out of town all this weekend as I'm driving to the other side of Texas. So that takes all weekend. And I don't want to miss anything. So I will see you then and hopefully get some other stuff up as well. So I will talk to you guys later.